Winkler. This is Spokane Plan Commission for Wednesday, February 24th, 2021. Welcome, everyone. We have a workshop and hearing today. Let's start by trying for roll. Kind of scanning over here. Jackie, you on? Yep.
Yep. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Michael Baker.
Here.
Todd Byrather.
Here.
Greg Francis.
Here.
Sylvia St. Clair. I believe that she is unable to attend today. Tom Sanderson.
Here. Promise.
Thank you. Carol Shook.
Here.
You. Clifford Winger.
Here.
You. Joanne Wright. Okay, looks like Commissioner Wright's not here yet. Mary Winkus.
Here.
You and Councilmember Kinnear.
Here.
Thank you. And it looks like we do have a quorum right now.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. And I remember seeing emails from both Sylvia and Joanne. Is that Louis? I think you were copied on the one from Joanne. Is that right?
Let me look back through my email.
Okay, I'm going off my memory. I'm pretty confident. So, okay. Thank you, everyone. Let's move. Let's first offer an opportunity for any member of the public to address the commission on an item that's not on today's agenda. Is there anyone that would like to address the commission? Not seeing any. I think the only phone, that's probably you, Cliff, right? Okay. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, moving into the briefing session. The first item would be to approve the February 10th, 2021 meeting minutes. Can I hear a motion to approve, please?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Michael and Greg. Any discussion, edits? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Abstentions? So approved. Thank you. City Council report. Councilmember Kinnear, please.
Thank you. So the docketing process for comp plan amendment changes is completed. We had council members Mum and Stratton, me as council members, and then we had Michael Baker, Greg Francis, Tom Sanderson as plan commission members. And we approved all but 2 of the applications to go forward to council for approval. And then this is not necessarily something that's pertinent to Plan Commission, but I think it's important for all of our community to know that we have finally reached an agreement with the Police Guild. The contract will come before council on Monday. It's expected to pass council, and it's expected that then the Police Guild will end their vote on March 2nd. So it's expected that they will approve it as well. They've been waiting for a contract since, I want to say 2016, 2017, right around in there. This has been a process that has been painful for everybody. Council in the past has not approved their contract because it did not honor the ombudsman charter piece, and it was important to all of us that it did. So after a lot of negotiation and making sure that council was part of that process this year, Council President Beggs was actually in the negotiation to help get that to where it is today. So it honestly, it was like giving birth. But I'm just glad that we're finally at a place where we can settle it and move forward. And then exciting for me personally is that council did approve special budget ordinance to have a full-time employee for historic preservation. So Megan Duval will have an employee who was her project manager for the last 2 years. and that was passed by council 6-1. Any questions?
Councilmember Kinnear, what does it mean that that position was taken from planning? Is that just how it read? It's not real.
No, it wasn't. It was a placeholder because there was no description in HR didn't have another description for that. So they used the planner position as a placeholder. And it didn't mean that we took a planner position. It was simply the closest thing that they could put in as a placeholder.
No, thank you for that clarification. I assumed it was here. Okay.
Yeah.
Just looking out for you, Liz. Thank you, Councilmember Kinnear.
All right.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Community Assembly Liaison Report. Mary, please.
Yeah, we have not met since the last time we met here, so I have nothing to report.
Okay, thank you, Mary. President report. I'd like to bring up a couple issues. For those of you that follow Olympia or virtual Olympia this year, there are a couple important bills that made it. So backing up a little bit, Monday was the fiscal cutoff, meaning February 14th was 15th, I believe, was the cutoff in the Committee of Origin, and then the 22nd is when it has to make it through the fiscal, appropriations or so forth. And so it's an exciting time to watch those through. The two bills that I paid most attention to relative to this commission are House Bill 1220, which gives some definition in our in the housing chapter of the comp plan, and I'm oversimplifying this, so anyone please jump in, on defining the traditional HUD, the HUD AMI levels, and that'll be part of the presentation today with Maren, I believe, for the different levels of affordability. And I think that's a really relevant, whether it makes it through or not, it's nice to see that kind of discussion happening in Olympia. The second one that's relevant is, I guess it would be 1099, right? That adds the requirement in the GMA for comp plans to have a climate or environmental section. And that's significant. Again, regardless of whether it goes through or not, it's really, I think, important that these kind of discussions are happening. And, I bring it up because, even if these go through, the cycle is going to be so long when it's actually required in our comp plans. And of course, our next comp plan is coming up in 4 or 5 years. Seattle's coming up in a couple of a year or so before that. I think it's good to see these top-down discussions happening, but maybe it's more just an accelerant for us to have these local discussions with or without the actual legislation passing. So the second thing is kind of a point of privilege I just want to put out there. Last night was exciting. The city of Berkeley passed a 9-0 resolution on exclusionary zoning practices. I think they renamed it in something such as allowing multifamily across residential zones or all zones in the city, but it is very significant. And for those of you in planning, know the history well, that Berkeley really, in many cases, most people really, Berkeley in 1916, I believe, right, was where exclusionary single family zoning originated. So it's very both symbolic and historic, but I think along with, a few weeks ago, the city of Sacramento passing a similar resolution, more focused on allowing multifamily across the entire city. I think there's a lot of momentum for local action to pay attention to on housing affordability. So I think I'll park it there because we're going to talk about it for an hour today. But I just wanted to acknowledge that that happened around 10:30 last night. They finally got to that item on their agenda. So I think it's worth noting. Okay, Moving on, let's go to the Transportation Subcommittee report to Clifford, please.
Hi. I talked to the people at the Integrated Capital Management, and in the comprehensive plan in Appendix D, there's a matrix that we use to prioritize transportation issues, and Integrated Capital Management says they'll give a new presentation. So the commissioners that are interested, contact Lewis so that you're on the mailing list when we have that presentation. And that's it for now.
Thank you, Cliff. And then Secretary report, please, Lewis.
The members of the Plan Commission that are on the interview panel for new Plan Commission members, you'll be receiving notice here soon. We're trying to set up meetings to do those interviews. We've got some standardized questions that we are sharing with the applicants beforehand, and we'll be using those as kind of conversation starters with those members coming up here shortly. I think that's all I have.
All right, that was quick. Okay, thank you. I guess with that, if Maren, if you're ready, we'll jump in early on the Housing Action Plan.
Yes, I was. Let me just finish getting my presentation up. So my name is Maren Murphy, and I'm a planner here at the city. I'm going to share more on our Housing Action Plan conversation that we started last week, and continue that this week with talking about draft strategies and policies, or priorities, draft priorities and strategies. 1 second. Okay. So again, we're building on the discussion that we started, I guess, the last Plan Commission meeting, so two Wednesdays ago. And we'll be coming back later on this spring with the draft plan for consideration. But again, just talking more about some of the priorities and potential strategies that we are exploring right now. So I want to start again just with the housing goals and the comprehensive plan. The city's comprehensive plan sets the long-term vision for the city in things like land use, housing, economic development, and capital infrastructure. And so I shared this last time, but the housing vision in the comprehensive plan calls for affordable housing of all types that is safe, clean, and healthy. And that really is in line with what we're talking about in the Housing Action Plan. And there are a number of goals, or there are 2 goals that with a number of supporting policies, one focusing on housing choice and diversity, and one focusing on housing quality and preservation. And again, this is very much in line with the Housing Action Plan in trying to increase housing diversity, affordability, and access to opportunity for residents of all incomes. For the conversation today, just of note that many of the housing policies in the comprehensive plan do speak to affordable housing in particular, and again, providing those opportunities for housing that supports all incomes, both across the city as well as in each neighborhood. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but just wanted to throw them up as a wide array of policies that we have that do speak to housing affordability, and that is one really key component of our current vision for housing within the city. And the Housing Action Plan can help us further meet these policies and again, further guide us in achieving our housing needs. So again, we're going to talk a little bit more about the priorities and potential strategies. I shared this last time as well, the draft organization of the Housing Action Plan, and just wanted to remind us that we're talking at a high level about the priorities and strategies today. This is still very much a draft discussion. And so as we pull together a draft plan and build out more context and suggested actions, we will be filling out each of these and going into a lot more detail. But today we're going to stay at a higher level, focusing on the priority level and then the potential strategies. So this is our list of priorities that we have right now. And we talked about the first one last week, which deals more with housing supply and housing options. That was a lot of discussion around, again, the kind of comp plan vision and some code amendments, code changes that could happen. And today we're going to focus in on hopefully the rest of them as much as we can get through. So we're gonna take them one by one though. And so we'll start with the second one today, which is preserve and increase housing affordability and quality. So just to kind of orient ourselves, I wanted to frame housing affordability within the context of this project. The Federal Housing and Housing and Urban Development, US HUD, considers housing to be affordable if the household is spending no more than 30% of its income on housing costs. And within the project, we've also been considering the combined costs of housing, transportation, energy costs, and other maintenance costs related to the monthly household. And so many of these really do feed into how affordable housing truly is. And so we want to make sure we're considering that as we're having this discussion.
Question, Maureen.
Yeah.
So does the HUD definition of housing affordability include transportation, energy, and maintenance, or is that what we're including?
Yeah, so thanks for that clarification. No, so the HUD definition is really focusing on just the strict housing costs. I think it might include utilities on some level, but broader discussions around transportation, around energy efficiency, some of the conversations we've had here are not included in that definition. And so when you do combine those, you can see, if someone's spending a quarter of their budget on housing and then another quarter of their budget on transportation, that eats into their monthly household budget quite a bit.
So does HUD actually do any evaluation with transportation costs or maybe some of the utilities, but are there any data sets out there that incorporate the transportation costs into it when they're looking at affordability?
Yeah, so there is a index called the Housing and Transportation Affordability Index, and that does just that. It combines housing and transportation costs, and we have that covered in some additional data that we have on the project page. But for Spokane, when you combine both of those, it can be upwards about 40% of an average household budget here. So it's more than the 30% when combined. So yeah, we do have some of that data available.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So something else I wanted to bring up just was the idea around area median income. And this is a common way to talk about housing needs and talk about strategies that meet different household needs and incomes. And so the area median income refers to the median income of all family households in a metro area or a county. And so the analysis of housing affordability typically groups them into an income level relative to the area's median family income level. And it's when you get into it, there's a lot of information in it because it varies by family size and costs vary by region. So HUD produces a median income benchmark for each area on an annual basis. And we do have one for the city, but again, it's a large matrix. But I just wanted to point out that there are some different ways that this plan is identifying extremely low income households, very low income households, low income households, and then moderate income households and higher. And we might see different strategies that better support particular household levels. That's something that we'll kind of be exploring in the planning process or as we develop the housing action plan. Oops, sorry. And then I wanted to just say, for example, in 2020, the income and rent limits for a low income family of 4, so that's between the 50 and 80% area median income, was just over $61,000. And then a very low income family of 4, so at that 30 to 50% area median income, was about $38,000. And so that, again, varies by family size and by geographic area. So through our data analysis, we know that as of 2018, close to 2 in 5 households in the city spent more than 30% of their income on housing, also referred to as cost burdened. And again, this is just one point that speaks to the growing housing affordability challenges that the city faces, and not unlike many other cities across the state, unfortunately. And we do have more on all of these data points on our project page. And then in addition to the data analysis that we've been doing, we also did some surveys on our housing experiences. And I just wanted to reiterate that when asking respondents about challenges experienced in finding a home in the city of Spokane, whether it's buying or renting, the highest rated challenge overall was finding a home that someone could afford. And that was particularly rated high among renters, low-income households, families, and those looking to buy a home. So starting off for some of the challenges, starting off on some of the potential strategies related to this priority. Again, the priority preserve and increase housing affordability and quality. The first one we're looking at is thinking back to the housing goals and thinking back to maintaining our existing housing affordability and our current housing stock. So often what is most affordable is what we currently have. And so we wanted to identify that aligning and leveraging resources, programs, funding to support existing affordable housing is a really key first step. And so examples of this include growing our city programs that continue to support the livability of existing affordable housing, ongoing rehabilitation and maintenance of existing housing, some local option taxes, fees, and levies, some conversations that City Council is having around this. And then there's some other ideas out there around local housing trust funds. And then we've talked a lot about energy and water efficiency upgrades. So I wanted to add something here, again, feeding into ideas around affordability. So just a couple of data points for this one. And if anyone wants to share anything, please do. Otherwise, I'll just keep going. But we do have an aging housing stock in the city, particularly in central area where many of the older neighborhoods are. So many of the key programs that we currently have at the city run through our partner departments, Community Housing and Human Services. They support home repair and rehab to help people stay in their homes and help maintain affordability going forward. So we want to continue to support those and leverage those as one key area. Any thoughts on those? All right, I will jump to the next one. The next one's looking at targeting efforts to increase the development of affordable housing. So again, how can we not only maintain, but how can we grow upon those? So some ideas around bonuses or incentives and fee waivers, providing access to public transit. So again, thinking about the combined cost between housing costs and transportation costs, looking at missing middle design standards to sort of help get the type of housing that we might want in our community, supporting smaller scale manufactured homes, fair housing design and construction training to help achieve affordable housing that meets those standards, and then more marketing and communication around our current opportunities.
Hey, Martin, this is Todd.
Yeah.
I know you got the comment during the council meeting on the manufactured and mobile home parks. I tend to agree with that. Why is that a preferred method relative to, because manufactured is obviously a very specific definition for, you know, the 1970s, 80s HUD programs, right? For meaning a structure on wheels, right? On a frame and so forth. It's very, very well defined, right? Is that really what we mean? Or are we talking about some other model?
Let me see. I might pull in Lewis or Terrell, someone that's a little bit more in depth with the code on this one.
I think that comes from the commerce guidance, and I think we have a plan policy too that speaks about this type of housing as a alternative and often a lower income type of housing. And then I think it also catches some people's interest in the tiny home communities.
Yeah. And I have to go do my homework, but it might even be protected in the GMA that you have to represent it. Is that possible?
I would have to double check that too, but I do think, yeah, there is a lot of protection, and we do allow manufactured homes under certain circumstances, like they have a foundation in our single family residential now. So
yeah,
we do
I think
other provisions for platting for mobile home parks.
Yeah, I think that's my question is, I think the manufactured home definition is protected. I know it is, and in the regional energy planning also, that is a specific category, but then it starts to create another conversation from a land use and zoning standpoint, right? Which I can't remember, should be called mobile home parks or so forth. But I think those one's talking about the structure, and one seems to talk more about the actual zoning.
Yeah, we don't have a specific zone for that.
Right.
And
that was brought up in the city council meeting, right?
Yes, some communities do have a specific zone for that, so we have not chosen that direction.
So I guess maybe my question is it sufficient just to say manufactured homes then? Because that's the definition of the building structure that we incorporate into our.
I think we'll do some more research on that, and recognizing this is a draft and that may be causing some confusion, and we'll figure out which is if we want both those terms or just one in there going forward.
We do have existing units that are classified as mobile homes within the city. They are manufactured as a different definition. The mobile home as a HUD definition. There has been efforts in some communities to purposely preserve mobile home parks that aren't manufactured homes. So I think there's still some value to having a term called mobile home park in our nomenclature.
Yeah, that's probably right. And I know it's just it's even more confusing when the modular world, they can't figure out their own terms. And so all of this gets confusing between manufactured, prefab, modular, so forth, which modular and prefab usually be defined more as, in school terminology, permanent structures versus, so. Yeah, it's not criticism. It's an honest question there.
Yeah, thank you. And we have heard throughout our engagement with stakeholders, our working group, and the roundtables we had in the fall of, not forgetting about these as a viable housing option, especially when we're talking about, the lower income households. And so we wanted to make sure that we reflected that.
If I may speak to this and take it slightly off topic, the one thing that stood out in my mind when I saw this listed as a viable option is the characteristic of mobile homes, manufactured homes to depreciate in value. And so my concern would be family wealth, which has been so many people have been left out of building family wealth, as a byproduct that we see of our housing crisis. So to use something as, I don't know, non-dependable to build wealth on as a means, to alleviate, I don't know, I just see some issues down the road. On the other hand, don't let me take away from the fact that in a crisis situation, every option should be explored. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Tom, just comment on that is a ongoing debate right now because of the equity question in the structure, and are you depreciating? Is it a depreciating model, right?
Yeah, I think that comes down to how the land is owned or is the land leased is a big question. You could come in today and do a subdivision that is all manufactured or prefabbed or whatever homes on individual lots. And we have a provision in our code to do them to where you would be leasing the land. And those homes are difficult to move. So you're kind of tied to the landowner at that point if you own it separately from the landowner. And it's the same problem with the older manufactured home or the older mobile homes. In some cases, the building codes today, you can't move that unit, period. It depreciates. It's not up to current codes, not up to current fire, electrical, on and on and on. And so that unit is pretty well stuck to that leasable spot. It's a whole discussion unto itself.
Exactly. Sorry I brought it up.
Aaron, you're no longer sharing your screen. I'm not sure if you know that.
I do. I just
Okay.
thought that people might want to talk in the grid, but I can.
That's
jump back
good.
to it.
Just checking.
To go to Tom's point, I think, the idea of manufactured homes is a good point about, wealth building, but at the same time, it is one of those types of housing that has a potential, can have a dramatically lower price point than other types of housing. So it can provide opportunity for housing, and I think it is a very important consideration. So.
All right. Let's see. So I can jump to the next one. So the next one, expand tenant landlord support and rental improvements. And so this is, there's been a lot of discussions and efforts on this over the past couple of years. So just continuing to incorporate that into the housing action plan. Some ideas around tenant protections, explore small landlord or small rental repair programs, long-term contracts with tenants and landlords that might help enhance stability, the energy and water efficiency upgrades for rentals, we've talked about that previously, and then continuing to focus on impediments to fair housing choice as identified through a CHHS. So the next one, expand preventative and proactive code enforcement. And again, one of the great things about the project so far has been working with some of our other departments in the city. And so we've been working really closely with code enforcement to understand how they approach housing. And so this is through conversations with them, trying to identify and uplift their efforts that they're doing around preventative and proactive code enforcement. So important to remember that while we do have a shortage of affordable units, and while that's a big focus, there is also occupancy hazards in our current affordable housing. And so looking at how we can enhance maintenance and repair, as well as more programming to identify these types of concerns before they get to a really crucial stage is an important part of this conversation as well. Just so some data around this that was provided by code enforcement, that as of January 2021, we had 293 total properties registered and actively monitored on the foreclosure, and 22 were observed vacant. So there's still a majority of them that are people are living in. And then the two other pictures on the right are examples of maintenance and repair of rental properties. That these are properties that people currently live in, but are showing dilapidation or have unpermitted repairs that might make them a safety hazard. And so being able to address those standards and livability of these properties before they fall into a derelict cycle is a really big focus for code enforcement, and something we wanted to reflect in this plan as well. So the next one is about regulating and monitoring short-term rentals to reduce impact on housing affordability, displacement, and conversion of long-term rentals. Sorry, did I say short-term rentals? I don't know if I said long-term rentals, but focusing on short-term rentals and their impact on long-term rental and long-term affordability. So part of that is looking at our current process and compliance with permitting. And then the Washington Department of Commerce provides a lot of guidance on what could be considered additional regulations around short-term rentals, with some examples of other cities have implemented them in Washington. So some other things to consider around that. And then finally, looking at publicly and partner-owned land for affordable housing. This is something that the city's been doing ongoing, and so just continuing to keep this as a strategy. There's been talks around what a land bank might look like in the city that helps clear titles and return land to use. There's also adaptive reuse when suitable for affordable housing that could be a strategy. And then there's more, a recent move to allow more flexibility to faith-based institutions for building housing on their property. And so the City of Seattle has started a program around that specifically. So that's the strategies, draft strategies that we're looking at for the second priority. Any thoughts before moving on to the third one?
I have a question, Maureen, about faith-based communities and housing. Does that include the option for like tiny home communities? I know has been a big issue over in Seattle where they've done tiny home communities, and a lot of it is faith-based organizations.
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that specifically. I can certainly look for it. So some of the projects that they had on the project page of the City of Seattle looked to be more of 3 or 4 story buildings that were apartments or things around those nature for affordable housing. I didn't see too much on tiny homes, but I could definitely look into that.
Okay. This is Terrell. Greg, there's a new a state law that was passed in the last session that allows faith-based institutions to request in zoning. It doesn't say how much. It says something like what's look appropriate. So I think that's what Seattle's starting to work on proactively. But as far as I know, the city hasn't been approached about that. But that's a model for some faith-based organizations to use some of their surplus property to include housing.
Okay.
Maureen, this is Mary. You have a section on what needs to be done to ensure the rights of the tenants. Shouldn't there also be something, since the tenant landlord thing is a big thing here in town, that assures something for the landlords, so that this is a plan that goes down easier? It looks one-sided.
Sure. Yeah, we can look back at that. Some things that I was researching on other cities were, ways to help with small rental repairs or small landlord repairs to help increase, to help them better maintain their properties. So some programming around that, but we can definitely look into other ideas around that.
Yeah, I would think it would balance the equation better.
Lauren, this is Tom. If I may speak in a general way about this, I see lots of points in this draft strategy where there will be opportunities for training, for apprenticeship programs to be involved to increase our skilled labor market. And I'm just saying that in a very general way because I like to do that occasionally. Nothing specifically, but there are a lot of opportunities for apprenticeship programs to get involved with this, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great point.
And certainly the community colleges have a lot of the apprenticeship programs. Says a former dean.
Yeah, thank you.
And the local union halls.
Awesome. Yeah, that'd be a great one to include. Thank you.
This is Carol. I have a question.
Yes.
Are we also considering for more housing? Are we also considering more apartments and more because I'm thinking sometimes apartments are easier for people to maintain rather than a yard. all the different maintenance that goes along with being a homeowner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so this strategy was is pretty heavy on programs, but at the priority we talked about last week about increasing housing options, certainly more multifamily housing, more apartments, condos, townhomes, all of those attached housing are really good options to get at the different affordability levels and different household needs.
Thank you. Thank you, Mara.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I can go back and we can jump to the third one. Okay, so third one, focusing on supporting pathways to equitable and attainable home ownership. And again, this one is a lot of program focus. And so we're kind of exploring what that looks like. So just to sort of orient the discussion, in our data analysis, we know that the household incomes have not, in the city of Spokane, have not been keeping up with home sales prices. And so this impacts what households can afford and the options available to them on the market. And so from 2012 to 2018, we saw a 21% increase in the median household income. And then roughly over the same amount of time, we saw a 47% increase in the median home sales price as of 2020. And we know that certainly in the last year, the Spokane area, along with many other areas, are continuing to see increasing home sales prices. And so the Zillow market research puts the last year alone at around an 18% increase for kind of the city and some outlining areas. So the overall trend remains, though, that the home sales prices are increasing and at a higher percentage than what our household income is increasing. So back to our community surveys, again, we asked about the challenges experienced in finding a home. And so I just wanted to pull out a couple of different ways that we've looked at this. And so I pulled out responses by homeowners and then responses by the renters who are interested in buying a home. And so you can see some of the differences, which I think speak to where people might be in the market or not able to even be in the market. Many of the homeowners challenges speak to issues of market competition and amenities. So they may be able to afford a home. They may have their financing ready to go. You know, they're ready to either move from a home or when they moved into the housing market, but they can't necessarily find one that meets their needs. And then the respondents interested in buying a home, the affordability does continue to be the biggest challenge, in addition to other challenges related to down payments or just on the rental side, money for a security deposit. So that really speaks to, not even being able to enter the market or having challenges of finding not just a home that meets their needs, but one that they can actually afford. And then also interesting was that finding a safe and quality home was higher among this group. So that goes to housing quality, housing quality, housing preservation, housing rehab. And then we looked at the renters, again, interested in buying a home. And then we looked at them by income level and then the different challenges they experienced in finding a home at the different income levels. And so lower income renters struggle to, again, find a home that they can afford, which may keep them from entering the housing market. middle and high income renters may find housing that they can afford, but they struggle with having enough money or are to pay for the down payment or are experiencing market competition. And so this can kind of help us start to think about different strategies or the different ways that we can support not only housing affordability at different income levels, but also homeownership at different income levels. And then I do just want to point out that we have a racial gap in homeownership in the city of Spokane, and between white households and Black households, it's about 40% and close to 50% gap between white households and Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander households. So a lot of this is rooted in histories of discriminatory housing policies like redlining and restrictive covenants, exclusionary zoning. But we're seeing, we do see a racial gap in homeownership. And so that is a key focus in trying to reduce barriers and trying to look at strategies that will help promote the equity in homeownership, not just from a financial sense, but also in helping people enter into the housing market. So for this one, I'm just going to put all of them up and we can kind of talk through them. Again, this priority is really focused on a lot of our programming. So the first one is highlighting and growing city programs that support and preserve, again, our quality and viability of homeownership. And so that's our programs that we have already in place. So really trying to highlight those, promote those. And a lot of those are managed by CHHS. So working closely with them and, identifying what they need in their own work to help their programs reach more people. Second one is reducing barriers and expanding access to homeownership among first-time homebuyers, low-income households, and people who have been historically marginalized. So some of those might be streamlining navigation or processes to better support information access, maybe doing some different marketing, some culturally relevant marketing around some of our programming. There's also been a lot of discussion on the third one of support shared equity homeownership models. So a lot of our community partners are exploring things like community land trusts or deed restrictions or resident-owned communities. And so how can the city better support that? And what would that look like from a city's perspective to help expand those options? And then we do have a really key focus on minimizing or mitigating displacement. That's one of our core criteria for the Housing Action Plan through the Department of Commerce. And so what are some ways that we can broader anti-displacement measures and policies and practices and help people stay in their homes and communities? So we've heard some ideas from stakeholders around utilizing a racial equity framework to help inform policies or continue to expand on research and practices of anti-displacement strategies. So we know that these are not necessarily under the normal quote unquote planning umbrella, but we do want to acknowledge this, and this speaks to the sort of broad focus of the Housing Action Plan to provide guidance at a lot of different programming as well as policy and the long-term vision. Any thoughts here before going on to the last one?
This is Mary again. All of this speaks to the housing side of it, and I think nothing could be clearer than the slide that you showed that said that incomes had gone up like 21% and housing costs had gone up like 47% or whatever it was. We need to do something, and it's not necessarily within the planning department, but the city has to do something to raise the income levels in this town, because it's going to get further and further out of whack as more people move in from out of area and have higher incomes and can do telecommuting from home and can buy what they still consider to be cheap homes here. So we've got to do something so that the scale is balanced.
I agree.
Really help raise our average. All these very high income earners coming in, our average is going to go up. It won't help the lower half, but
Yeah, it doesn't help those who have lived here for a long time.
I was somewhat joking. But
Yeah,
anyway.
but it really is a disparity that really needs to be looked at in a different light than just trying to pile it all on the housing part of it.
There's been discussions too about a national issue about incomes, average incomes not keeping up. There's been a lot more aggregation of wealth towards the top over the past several decades. And
so we've noticed, yeah.
Yep. Well, and that is impacting the average household and individual's ability not at the top to be able to afford daily needs, not including housing, transportation, food, all of your basic basket of goods that it takes to be sustainable. And so there are many different factors at play that are impacting affordability for lower income groups.
I just think some of those ought to be mentioned. It's like that part doesn't exist, and I think that ought to pull out.
And not to get further into the weeds of this conversation, but just to bring up that those numbers were from 2018 that we just looked at. So I think we could probably cut like a third off of some of those low numbers.
Well, it's probably more out of whack.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you both for that. Any other thoughts on home ownership? All right. Then we'll transition to the last one. So this one is about leveraging regional partnerships to support housing initiatives. So partnerships are of course a part of all of this, and there's a lot of the different factors of a housing market, but this one we wanted to call out a few things that might go beyond the scope of the city, but really speak to sort of the broad range of the housing conversation, the different connections and partnerships, as well as the larger regional housing market. So just a data point here. So this is what's called a home opportunity index, and it's comparing the home opportunity for different metro areas. And so it's measuring the percentage of homes sold in the previous quarter that would be affordable to the median income for that region. And we know that while Spokane is certainly experiencing more increasing unaffordability, we are still affordable compared to other markets, which is part of the challenge that we're facing, is that other markets are, people are interested in moving over here. And so that's adding to more market competition, more increased home sales prices. But just to kind of keep it in perspective, that relative to some of our neighboring markets, that Spokane does continue to remain affordable. So we are hopefully in a unique position where the Housing Action Plan can kind of help preserve a lot of that affordability and get ahead of the conversation as we're trying to build out priorities and strategies and identifying what the city can do to really add to that. So in this graph, it shows that a household with an income at 100% AMI in Spokane could afford 64% of the houses sold in the last quarter. So that's what the 64 means. And then you can see just over in Coeur d'Alene, quite a bit less, and Idaho, and then across Washington. And then again, just bringing this back is what influences the housing market, knowing that there's a lot of the different factors and what is the role of local government in doing this. And so the Department of Commerce has outlined a few key roles. One, looking at financing and incentives. So how can we help increase the production of housing? We can look at our development codes, development regulations. We can look at different policies, housing, our land use, our housing chapters to see how we can further those. And then the third factor is looking at support for residents. So again, that's a lot of the programming and how we can help residents access housing or get into the marketplace or help maintain affordable housing for rentals, and working with our affordable housing partners to help increase the development of affordable housing. So things that help support our residents. So just wanted to throw this up as a reminder of the many different ways that the housing market is influenced. And then as far as strategies for this one, a few high level ones here. One is continuing conversations with health, education organizations, transportation, parks organizations to support housing and quality of life. Again, that's been one of the positive engagement pieces related to the Housing Action Plan, has been connecting with all of the different stakeholders, the working group, our partner organizations, and having some really great conversations around housing and health, or housing and transportation, housing and education, or understanding more about how different amenities feed into people's desire to live in certain areas, or the development amenities as well. Second one is support and grow use of housing data and analysis. And so continuing to build on our housing needs assessment, continuing to identify and analyze data that's coming out. At the state level, there'll be a lot more focus on affordability data and providing that on a more regular basis, so we can incorporate that into our analysis in the city going forward. There's also been talk of from our stakeholders, as well as some internal discussions on an ongoing housing stakeholder group of some kind. So how can we continue to engage a community conversation around it, engage our stakeholders, and more regularly, but also build out on more of a regional discussion about the housing market across the region. Again, knowing that many builders work across the region, realtors work across the region, and people move to the Spokane area, but they might look in the city or outside the city for housing. And then finally, supporting growth management planning, which best meets our comprehensive plan goals and policies. So just kind of working with our different jurisdictions and the discussion around growth management planning, and making sure that we're adhering to our comprehensive plan goals and policies.
That last bullet point is important too, because we need to make sure that all jurisdictions are accommodating their fair share of various income levels and various types of housing. You can have issues where one jurisdiction ends up having, for example, most of the multifamily, and that can be problematic for others. So it creates more burden within the region.
You know, Louis, on point, I agree, and that I would extend it within the city, that are all of our districts, neighborhoods, what sub areas, however you want to, break it up, participating in both the benefits and the burdens of growth, right? And so I put that challenge out, that as well, first of all, compliments to the progress on this. If I can make a couple of general statements, thank you. Sections 2, 3, and 4 in terms of priorities, yes, they're very heavy on programs and certain policies that I would kind of put under administrative, or very focused, right? They're not the broad stroke, right? They're not the big moves. They're all the little things we have to surgically do, correct, and find and continuously improve and find optimization for, and all the different stakeholders. A few of us sat in earlier on the council's initial stakeholder meeting for the Housing Action Committee, as that was called. And it's complicated. This is multivariable calculus, right? And it's so critical to have all those voices. And then at the same time, it's hard to wrap your head around action items to pursue, right? Everyone is coming with their micro focus and important contribution, but then it's hard to put a broad stroke on it. So I'm kind of curious with everyone here, what do we think the opportunities as a plan commission are to contribute to the city, to the, to advise the council in particular, given this complexity? Is, I mean, I have an opinion. It's primarily in item number 1 that we discussed last time, right? But I'd be curious what others think here. And I would open it up to, while the last item in section 4 was to, is to support growth management planning, which best meets the comprehensive plans, goals, and policies, which comprehensive plans, goals, and policies should also be opened up if we're going to really advise the council on making a mandate. If there is a resolution that we want to help the council develop, what would that be? And I won't answer that until someone else has a chance to talk. Councilmember Kinnear, please.
So I'm kind of cheating because I am counting 1/7. And I would say that we have an opportunity here. Our comprehensive plan does provide us the guidance for more density, and that is around our centers and corridors. And we have a multitude of centers and corridors to look at, and we have others that are waiting in the wings to be developed. So I would invite this body to look at the opportunities that are already available to us to increase multifamily housing, to increase townhouses. Condominiums are still problematic because of the insurance piece that apparently the legislature hasn't fully reconciled yet. I think we have opportunities to increase density, and we need to pursue those first. It has to be a discussion that involves our neighborhoods. We can't do this in a vacuum. We have to involve the neighborhood councils, because ultimately they're the ones we all represent. And ultimately they're the ones that we answer to. We're going to have to look to them for guidance as well. It's not just you and the council, it's the neighborhoods, all 29 of them, that have to weigh in on this and say, how are we best going to meet this demand? And we also have to realize that the outlying areas, City of Spokane Valley, Liberty Lake, all of those areas have a responsibility to step up and provide additional housing. This is a nationwide crisis. It's not peculiar to Spokane. And sometimes we treat it as if we've got this horrid housing crisis. The whole country is going through this. And Marm presented those stats on other cities and what they're going through. So we have to keep this in perspective as well. Mary Winkus mentioned that the city needs to do something about the financial equity piece, but that's not necessarily a function of government. That is something that our business community has to step up and address. And when large corporations such as Amazon come in and say, yes, we're going to start at $15 an hour, I cringe. $15 an hour is not enough to sustain yourself as a single person in Spokane. It's just not. So we have to put pressure on our business community to come up with something viable that's going to support people, a living family wage. And that's where somebody mentioned, who was it? Apprenticeships and skilled labor. Those are fantastic ways to increase your, without a huge college bill, but increase your wealth, increase your wage. And so it's complicated, Todd, you're absolutely right. Let's not lose sight of that big picture. Let's not lose sight of the fact that our comprehensive plan is already giving us solutions. We tweak it every 8 years or so, and that's good, but we already have some of the answers that we need right now, and we need to go after those. I consider them low-hanging fruit.
Councilmember Kane, can I support that your statement and then purposely twist your words for the sake of triggering triggering discussion here? I mean that jokingly, but so I do agree with you. I support obviously the centers and corridors, and then I would say there's an and in there. Can the neighborhoods be looked at for guidance, but also with a mandate to help solve this problem? And again, going back to that phrase, benefits and burden. If we now take all of the data that's coming out of this housing action plan, specifically the great contribution of displacement mapping, right? That's something, to my knowledge, we haven't had in the city yet. If we look at our density mapping from the infill project from 2016, we look at the AMI mapping. My head is all in GIS right now for the GIS geeks on this call. Can we start to say then by neighborhood, there is not a housing mandate for your neighborhood, but we want to bring you to the table to help say, we believe there's a capacity in neighborhood X for 300 more units. Now, there are going to be different surgical solutions to how we do this in Comstock versus wherever, East Central, right? But that way we engage and put a responsibility on the neighborhood, not just setting us all up for conflict.
Yeah, I agree that whenever you say the word mandate, people recoil. Oh, they're making me do something. So phrasing and nuance is very important in this discussion, and bringing everybody to the table is very important as well. So I don't disagree with you. I just want to make sure that our neighborhoods and the people, our councils, are represented in this discussion, and that we bring as many people to the table as possible. You can challenge them, say, hey, you in Comstock, you in Rockwood, Greg Francis, you could stick in another house next to yours on your property, and so could all your neighbors. Certainly we can challenge them in that way. The best way to bring people along is to include them in the decision-making process and not mandate. So that's all I'd say about that. But generally, yes, I agree.
And as the CA representative, that has to be a really careful conversation, because anything that looks like it will lower the property value of an individual who already owns something or is paying something, and that's their primary wealth, you're going to get pushback.
Marion, just respectfully on that though, anytime that kind of statement is made, that has to come with actual evidence, because I have not seen it, and that's common debate, right? That the property values are going to depreciate, and that's not defensible in my experience. But I would open that up to anyone who wants to make that argument, of course, to bring that to the table.
It will be made, clearly.
Well, I mean, honestly, then this housing action plan has to bring that into the community discussion and give actual evidence that increasing housing in a neighborhood is going to depreciate your land values. I think it's a very slippery. Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there is that perception that housing values could be impacted by some intensification, and I think this is where education and involvement is absolutely critical. And this is why the Plan Commission is there, and why the Planning Department is there, and why the City Council is there. Everything we do should be a part of a public process to make sure that we're gathering input. At the same time, I think it's incumbent upon us to provide education back on the value that can come with some changes, and address any potential concerns about negative impacts, because there are going to be concerns, absolutely. And I think they do have to be addressed. Otherwise, if you have those concerns, and you will have the pitchforks out there, and we want to make sure the pitchforks are directed at City Council, not at us, but I'm kidding. But no, I think education is a huge factor, and providing the data so to alleviate some of the concerns that will arise.
If I might speak to this, on Greg's coattails, maybe one approach we can take is to look at this. I don't know. I'm a big fan of incrementalism, but I think neighborhoods might be maybe too small. Sort of like herding cats at times, just to get them at the table, from what I can understand. So maybe if we look at this in a district by district manner, bring collaboration to the bigger picture, then you put that in with education that Greg is talking about, and try to get some of that public feedback from a larger perspective.
Well, Tom, there is a, we have a very, very strong neighborhood council system. We have community assembly, which represents all 29 neighborhoods. And while there are differences between the various districts, it ends up being more differences probably by type of neighborhood, whether it's more of a interurban neighborhood versus a suburban neighborhood. And so there might be, when we did the infill committee last time, we actually did some working groups with various neighborhoods and we actually broke up into subgroups focusing on, all right, you're in the inner neighborhood, you're East Central or Cliff Cannon, and you're older housing stock, you're already zoned multifamily in a lot of cases. How are we going to provide housing in your area versus a Southgate or a Comstock or a 5 Mile, where you tend to be larger lots, more single family detached with large multifamily developments. And I think that actually worked out fairly well, and we got a lot of data out of that. Some of that data we've never taken action on, unfortunately.
Wouldn't if I could just speak on that, wouldn't those groups almost naturally form within the larger discussion group of a district? If you have I don't know how many neighborhoods are in each district, but if you have a certain district focusing on itself, then those small factions of neighborhoods with commonalities could maybe naturally form and come up with a cohesive idea and plan to work with.
Tom, speaking for the CA, I don't think that would happen.
I am an idealist.
Well, and I've been living with the CA for 5 years, so I don't think that would happen. Right now, they're doing some things on Clean Green, and they sorted people tonight. My meeting is mostly single family residents, because that's what Manitou Cannon Hill is, and I'm meeting with other people from around town that are in areas that are all mostly single family. But the grouping was done at ONS. I'm not sure it would naturally occur at a district meeting. So I guess I'm agreeing with Greg.
I think the key is, I think it's absolutely essential that we involve the neighborhood councils in the planning process, but we also need to recognize that neighborhood councils are not the only residents of the city, that there are many residents that do not participate in the neighborhood council system. And so we really need to have a broad public outreach. And that includes a lot of different stakeholders.
Yeah, we can do that through Nextdoor.
Well, I think to put a specific topic here, Tamar and planning staff on the Housing Action Plan, my request would be that we're able to point to something, whether it's in this document or something else, so that when we take on difficult planning topics on the Plan Commission and the council, that the neighborhood councils and then the small N neighbors have participation beforehand with these topics, whatever that outreach looks like. If we need to invite Mr. Alexander and have a broader discussion about that education piece going out to neighborhoods and being able to point to some objective, data sets so that when a statement such as land values will depreciate based on increasing affordable, increasing housing options, that's has to be a defensible statement, and I don't believe it is. So I know it's very specific, but it's the common argument that can bog down all of these bigger strategies that we need to take as a city. So I'll give another example. When we're going to get into it, when we talk about ADU reform, it's the same thing. We'll get into the depreciation, the threat of depreciation, and that has to be a correlated, argument. So.
Yeah, thank you. The community acceptance discussion has come up in almost every conversation we've had, particularly in the roundtables we did in the fall. And so that is something that we can embed in, each priority. There'll certainly be a communication side of that, education, more understanding of these priorities and how they can help be a solution, not a hindrance. But and then the Commerce has some great guidance that I've been looking at recently about specifically talking about quote unquote affordable housing and just different ways that we can help dispel some of those concerns or talk about them at least in really informed ways. So in the short term, working with communications on a potential blog post that just talks about what affordable housing means within the context of this plan, and maybe pointing to some of those resources in the immediate term, but then also building in a strong emphasis on community acceptance throughout this plan, I think would hopefully provide some good starting points for future discussions. And each one of these strategies or actions, there'll be additional discussions and processes on them when the city goes to move forward with them. The plan is a guidance document, and so there'll be additional conversations to be had and more opportunities to really engage both the neighborhood councils as well as the general public. And there already are conversations going on, and so how can the city add to that?
Yeah, there are lots of factors, and it's interesting to see how far we should go with this. I mean, does the city, Washington State's been known to have a, not a very progressive tax system based on income and per capita. Even at the city budget level, we have very high utility taxes that impact lower income households to a higher percentage than other income groups. The city, because of that, would benefit greatly from denser housing, in the downtown core, for example, because we have very high utility rates, and they generally have, on average, if you can cluster, have higher density housing, you have less cost of services across the board, depending, there's some flexibility there, but we could show that. And there's lots of different factors that affect the overall housing market. So just interesting to see how far this plan should go. I think we're still at 20% utility tax for the general fund on water and sewer, and that is a big revenue generator for the general fund, but it's a heavy burden on lower income households, where we don't have, like Seattle, a business and occupation tax, for example, at the local level. And those are all very controversial subjects, just like what kind of housing is provided in each neighborhood.
Well, it's great to see the progress on this, Martin. Thank you. I think a couple of things that stood out to me today are I like to see that we're starting to address in context, renovation right? You know, there's the energy and water efficiency piece of it, right? That is there, but I think there's also, I can see this coming together to say, you know, the general strategy like Seattle does, where they're saying we need a larger number of smaller units, right? That's kind of a broad statement. And so what are all the strategies that allow us to do a larger number of smaller units? Is it ADUs? Is it, you know, detached or attached, right? And then when we start getting into, if we do ADU reform and get into detached, then one of the most cost-effective ways to maintain affordability is renovation and reuse, or not adaptive reuse, renovation and conversion, right? To maybe multiple units within a, you know, a given structure, right? That starts to help both the financing on the project, but also the affordability. And then that just keeps expanding, right? Or the more difficult conversation of, when is demolition appropriate and cost effective for a developer to do, and where does that happen? And it's not going to be surprising that's going to happen in higher AMI areas, and then we're going to run into the difficult conversation of necessary, you know, mixing income AMI in certain neighborhoods. So please, Councilmember Kinnear.
So Todd, this is just my recommendation because of all the meetings I go to and meeting with all sorts of people. To make your point, if you bring up the S word, which is Seattle, you've lost your argument. So I would encourage you not to compare what Seattle's doing with something that we could adopt and stick to cities that are smaller our size. I mean, I lived there, I was born there, I lived there for 20 years. I saw Seattle as a failed experiment. Right now, it's not working. And the people who live there, clearly, some of them are coming here. It's not working for them either. So I think we have to be really careful who we compare ourselves to and what we want to emulate. And ultimately, I think we want the best solution that is a Spokane solution, not a Boise solution, not a Salt Lake City solution, or Portland or Seattle. And that's what I've been hearing from community members as well, that it needs to be uniquely Spokane.
No, by point taken. But I respectfully also don't know, you know, we look at lots of what Olympia is doing, what Tacoma is doing, great examples of some of their pilot programs. Sacramento, it's bigger than us, but still, these are all models of planners and community, you know, stakeholders that are all trying to fix their problems. So I agree, Seattle is, from a planning standpoint, structurally is a mess, but I give a lot of credit to the planners and the commissioners and this, you know, so forth, that are trying to address those problems. But it is out of control. They have a bigger lift than we do. So thank you. Okay, anyone else? We have 7 more minutes here. Maren, is there anything? Yes, please.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, I know that Michael has mentioned that we typically have about 1,500, if I remember correctly, 1,500 market rate homes, and we're down to 100 or 250 or somewhere in there, if I remember correctly. How many affordable homes do you think we would need here in this Spokane as of today? How many would we need to meet the need of our families here in Spokane today? If we were making a decision today, how many residences would we need to take care of our families? Is there a number that we could look at? How many, what are we trying to get to here?
We had a meeting last week with a number of people, with builders, developers, the people from the building community were also present. We had a couple of economic people. And the number we generally came up with is Spokane has not built about 32,000 homes that we should have built since 2010.
is there any way, Michael, to share those numbers? That sounds enormous.
Yeah, I can send all of you the reports the reports we recorded, all of them. So if anybody would like it, just send me a note and I'll send it back to you.
And Michael, is the webinar that you gave last week, is that available?
Yes, it is. And the complete webinar is available. I'll be glad to send that out to any members that want it.
Yeah, maybe Jackie can distribute that, please, if you're willing.
Okay.
Could you just send both to Jackie and let her send it out to us?
Yep.
Great. Did you factor in what's happening here now because of the pandemic? Because our numbers are lower because people aren't moving because of the pandemic.
Are you speaking to me?
Yeah, since you're the one talking about the report, I was wondering what factors you took into account about this last year and the pandemic.
Well, we didn't specifically figure the pandemic into it. I'll send the report out to you guys right now, and you can take a look at it. That'll give you a lot better answer than I can.
Okay, anyone else? We have a couple minutes here, but we can also thank Maren and team. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I can, really quick, if you don't mind, I'll just throw this back up. Just our project page and my email in case anyone is viewing. And then as I'm just sort of next steps, we're going to be at City Council tomorrow as well for study session, talking about some of the same things. And then we're going to go into a formal kind of plan development writing stage throughout March. We'll be continuing to refine these, edit them, and then bring it back here towards the end of the month, early April. And so, again, these are draft, and we've gotten a lot of feedback and comments so far. We're going to also meet with our internal team and our working group on these as well. And so we'll continue to get feedback and comments. And so when we bring back an actual draft plan, it may look somewhat different. All that's still to be fleshed out. It will have more information around it and more context, but just wanted to reiterate that these were draft discussions, draft priorities. And so we're going to build this out farther over the next month or so. So thank you all. And if there's any questions or anyone want to connect later on, please do reach out.
All right, nice job. Thank you.
Thank you, Maren. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. I see our next agenda item. We will give it to, I think, Jason, right? Jason and Carl, I see you both on. So for Division Connects, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Jason Liam with Spokane Regional Transportation Council. And as you mentioned, I'm joined by Carl from STA, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you see it okay? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. So I last talked to this group in October about the Division Connects study. It's a transportation study of the Division Street corridor. And I'm going to breeze through some of the overview stuff here in the beginning. And then Carl and I will be talking about, I'll actually pass it on to Carl to talk about some of the work that's been done since October, specifically talking about some of the alternatives that are under consideration for the corridor. But to start off, this study is a multi-jurisdictional study, multiple agency partners. It's jointly managed with STA between SRTC, Agency and SDA. This first phase of the study, which we're in right now, is looking at transportation options for all modes. So with the focus being on transit implementation, for that mode being bus rapid transit, and we'll talk about what those alternatives look like today. And also understanding, within the context of these different transportation options, how is Division Street impacted within the greater system, including the future completion of the North Spokane corridor, so just a couple miles to the east of Division. When that highway corridor is completed in about 10 years, if things go as planned, that's going to have an impact on the way people travel. And so the study did some technical work to try to help understand what the future travel demand may look like with a completed NSC. And then the second phase of the study is going to focus more on land use. So it's interesting you're talking about housing in your previous agenda item. So the study will actually be looking at, generally speaking, land use opportunities along Division and working closely with our city and county partners in that aspect of the study. And this project is really building the foundation for future work. So the work that we're doing to identify a preferred alternative for transit and other transportation modes will of course lead to additional work in the future in various steps that you go through for preliminary engineering, final design, and so on. And those steps will build on what the findings are in this particular project. And the study structure, and I mentioned the joint management between SRTC and SDA, working with our agency partner group of WashDOT, City of Spokane, Spokane County. We have a consultant team that's helping us with the technical work, led by Parametrics. And then we have a steering committee that has met 5 times so far. They help us with, as an advisory group, they help guide us through some of the milestone decisions that the project goes through. And that membership consists of a subset of both the SRT and STA boards. And this is that group listed here, 6-member group. And from the City of Spokane, it includes council members Mum and Burke, and then Commissioner French, Council Member Hattenberg from Spokane Valley, and then the leaders from WashDOT and SDA, respectively. And in terms of looking at Division Street and understanding that it has been, an important commercial corridor, an important transportation corridor within Spokane for quite some time. We found this image in the archives from around 1943. You can see actually a bus service operating then, so it's kind of poignant, I guess, that the Division Bus 25 today continues to be one of the highest ridership routes in the SDA system, and looking to improve on that is part of the goals of the project. And in terms of the steps that Division Street has gone through and its evolution has gone through over time, the study process is really thinking about what's the vision for a future Division Street. And part of that is enhancing transit service, making enhancements for other modes of transportation. And then there's also that land use component. So thinking about where are opportunities along the corridor that can complement transportation improvements. And when we talk about the Division Corridor, we're really talking about the entirety of it, from its connection to downtown to its connection to the NSC in the north. So it has these distinct components that are listed in the map on the left. The downtown, of course, and then the couplet section where it's divided into northbound Ruby and southbound Division up to North Foothills Drive. And then the main line where it comes back together roughly from just north of the couplet up to the Y. So where it splits into the Newport Highway heading east and continues at 395 to the north. So those distinct components will be mentioned when Carl is talking about the alternatives that are under consideration. One of the things that we're doing and looking at constraints and opportunities on Division is what's the existing right-of-way. So in that mainline section, it's a pretty consistent 94 to 97 feet of right-of-way. And there's actually more opportunity within the couplet with portions or good portions of Ruby being up to 100 feet of right-of-way and 87 feet on the Division side. And I mentioned that the extent of the right-of-way is one of the constraints that we use. We didn't consider alternatives that required basically, kind of wholesale acquisitions of right-of-way. I mean, I think some of the alternatives may consider spot improvements at intersections and perhaps station locations, but generally speaking, trying to maintain any potential improvements within the existing right-of-way. And we used the regional model, travel demand model, to look at future travel demand. And that's that systems approach to think about a completed NSC and what impact that has on Division and other north-south arterials. And also, if we do some potential alternative scenarios on Division, what impact does that have? And so we have some interesting modeling results we're going to share today. And then that multimodal aspect is to accommodate active transportation, so those walking and bicycling modes. And we looked at, for the different scenarios for Division, either on-street facility improvements or parallel routes. So those parallel routes in what we ended up looking at for the final alternatives are really what we're looking at for the main line of Division, is some of those lower volume parallel streets and how those can be signed or proved to be greenways of sorts to accommodate bicycle travel. And then where there's more opportunity in the couplet, you'll see that we have offered different options for bike facilities and pedestrian improvements as well. I actually shared this graphic back in October too. So at the time, we're really kind of up there at the top of the funnel. We're really just starting to develop some of the scenarios for transportation options along the Division corridor. And we started with a pretty wide range of different scenarios and building blocks. And over time, we narrowed those down through a screening process, looking at technical criteria and also high-level criteria to start to winnow it down to a more manageable number of alternatives. In the end, through this process, through the technical analysis, through talking to our steering committee, looking at best practices, we have 4 alternatives under consideration, and Carl will walk through those today. And since late January, we have taken those 4 alternatives forward to review with the public. So we have some online engagement tools that are active now, where folks can see the alternatives and respond to questions about them. And what this is really working us toward is a preferred alternative. So here I'll turn it over to Carl.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So good to talk to everyone again. I think, again, some of this is rehashed from last month or last time we presented, where we discussed a framework of all evaluation criteria. And so I'm going to try to jump into the actual evaluation process more quickly here. If you can go to just the next slide, Jason. The preliminary evaluation that we did over basically December into early January, we looked at a subset of the criteria in the framework and things that we could do using the travel demand model, some early demographics data, screening of NEPA and SEPA considerations like environmental hazards and park property, other things that might be especially protected in the corridor, initial operating capital costs, as well as looking at the north end of this routing. And so the slides that follow are the 4 alternatives and our initial evaluation. So next slide. These are the 4 alternatives. I'll get into each of them individually, but just you see that main line, as Jason described, from roughly Foothills or Euclid north to the Y, the couplet being from North River Drive or so until Foothills. Next slide. So the first alternative is a center running alternative. We had several in our earlier screening process. We narrowed it down to 1. And this alternative has the buses operating the main line in the center of the street on Division Ruby. It's on what is the left side of the street for traffic flow. So Division, that's the east side, Ruby, that's the west side. So they're kind of interior and they lead up and flow into the center lanes up to the north. There's also bike lane shown and generally, again, the same right-of-way footprint as today. Next slide. These are some initial renderings of what this could look like. The top image is on the main line, just north of Garland and Empire. And one thing about the center running station, it assumes we're taking a lane of traffic and there's no turn lanes available then. And most turning movements are going to be at major intersections, which means you're going to have to drive past a location or business and drive backwards, kind of like Queen Avenue is like that today if you're going northbound. and you want to go to the other side of the street. On the couplet, those are business access and transit lanes, and so cars can turn into the lane, out of the lane, and travel in it for up to a block to make their turning movements, and so that's why it's a BAT lane, business access and transit. And the station shown on the left-hand image, that is near the general store. On the right-hand side, that's Kennedy Apartments on the right. And you see basically it's the same number of lanes as we have today, but then the right-of-way, just using that right-of-way more efficiently to put in a bicycle lane. But again, you count the lanes, that's 8 lanes, 2 of them dedicated to transit with turning movements. Next slide. Okay, this is side running A alternative, and it's kind of a mirror image on the bottom of the center running. The top, though, is different in that the buses are on the outside lane. So stations would be adjacent to activities on the side of the road, whether it's housing or businesses or parks. And the BAT lanes are shown there on the bottom. I say a mirror image from the center because everything's switched. The bus lanes are now on the right side. There are bike lanes on the left side. Again, same number of lanes as today, so no reduction in the pavement that's dedicated to cars, just the addition of bicycles. Might be narrower lanes. In the case of Division, they're very wide today. And then next slide is some renderings of this. And the top image you'll see repeated over all 3 side running alternatives because it basically is the same through the main line. The difference really comes down to the couplet. So in this case, couplet, you see the stations on the far side, the outside lanes of Division and Ruby, with the bikes in the middle. Next slide. The side running B alternative, again, the main line is exactly the same as side running A, but the couplet is dramatically different. We have, instead of 4 lanes of traffic on Division, we actually have 4 lanes plus a center turn lane because now it is a 2-way street. Parking is shown, so really is kind of maximizing that right of way for car movement, introducing a 2-way street, kind of going back to its original design as a car, 2-way car street commercial boulevard. Then Ruby really becomes a focus of multimodal with bicycle lanes on either side, protected bike lanes, the buses in a lane in each direction, and then that are BAT lanes, so people can turn in and out of businesses, and then a single lane each direction for cars. So again, 4 lanes on Ruby, so essentially the same as today, except now there's a bike lane in each direction compared to the center running and the side running A alternative. Next slide shows the renderings. Again, the top is exactly the same as side running A, but down below you see the left is Division Street. It looks more like Sprague in Spokane Valley, where it is 2-way east of University Road, wide commercial street, and we show parking like it used to have on Division. Now, Ruby becomes dramatically different. Same number of lanes, but 2 of those lanes are for transit, and it is a 2-way street. It doesn't have any turn lanes, and so that means you'd see if coming into the corridor, you got to wait for a gap. Getting off the street, you're going to create a backup during that time. So it's going to be a slower moving street, more pedestrian friendly in a lot of ways, and the buses on the outside lanes there. One thing from a transit perspective, having those stations on the same street can be good for making it easier for people to access the service, coming back and forth in either direction. They know where they started there. They got off the bus, they go to that same area, that's where they'll catch it. Next slide. This is side running C, and you might think it is kind of the same as A in that the buses are on the right-hand side, it's still a couplet. However, it has reduced effectively over A or B the amount of pavement dedicated to moving vehicles, motor vehicles, both buses and other general purpose vehicles. So on Division, Instead of 4 lanes of general purpose traffic, there are only 3 shown, plus an opportunity for on-street parking. So that allows for wider sidewalks. Ruby has only 3 lanes instead of 4, 2 of those for general purpose traffic, plus the bat lane. Again, Division also has a bat lane. And then that savings of space, coupled with the fact that it is a wide amount of right-of-way for the most part, we introduce a full dedicated separated cycle track. And this would be, next slide. This really is, the side that is closer to the residential areas, including Gonzaga University. And so in the renderings on the bottom, you see the greater opportunity for streetscape improvements on Division, and then a pretty huge opportunity for a dramatic change of what Ruby Street could look like. And from again, the reduction of pavement dedicated to moving motor vehicles is really the difference between this and all the other alternatives. Next slide. Well, part of our ultimate recommendation will be a placement of stations along the corridor. We want to do this early so people are cognizant of what we're planning for, but there's still a lot of design engineering to do to refine these, but we are proposing to reduce the number of stations compared to the number of bus stops today to help improve the speed and reliability, focus our stations at higher activity nodes. So there are typically today the bus stops are about a quarter mile apart. This introduces some larger gaps between that, so there's more areas where it's more like a half mile apart, which is typical of bus rapid transit. And I should point out the land use study will really help inform the next phase of the overall study. Will give us a sense of, in addition to more preliminary engineering, where some of these stations might be, especially if they're not associated with a, Wellesley is really important because it's associated with a crosstown bus route, the number 33. Whereas other locations, let's say around Holy Family Hospital, is there an opportunity to really, we have a station showing at Central and Rowan. You know, is it Rowan or is there something more mid-block between Rowan and Queen? Might there be an opportunity as we think about that segment to reimagine the land use on the opposite side? You've got single-family housing that's kind of sandwiched between a hospital, medical district area, and then heavy retail, and then it's got this wonderful park across the street. Is there an opportunity to increase the number of people who could take advantage of those commercial, and maybe make that a more walkable node? So that kind of thinking may inform the next phase of our planning on bus stops as well, or station locations. Next slide. This is something, it's more kind of interesting to the county residents or county planning, is where and how do we end the route? BRT lines are most effective, or any transit for that matter, that you have a solid high frequency end to end. Now, a lot of rail systems, you have branches that go out beyond the core, but those branches still typically have high frequency. With this, we'd like to keep that high frequency all the way to the end, to keep it really simple and consistent and support the growth all the way to the end. And so today we serve Hastings Park and Ride, and we kind of do it with a zigzag, Newport Highway to Hawthorne, then up to Hastings. And that way we serve North Point Shopping Center, we serve Fort Worth University, and go to Hastings Park and Ride, which is a facility that's been around for decades. As we think about the future up there, we know that the land use plan calls for mixed use, high intensity mixed use happening on the Kaiser property. In recent months, that has come up as a planned implementation over the next decade. Also, that location near Farwell Newport Highway there on the top right of the map would be closer to the North Spokane corridor. So there would be opportunities for other regional connections there. So we applied the regional travel demand model and looked at a number of scenarios that are mapped here. Basically, the bottom line is we learned connecting to Whitworth University is really important. It's for the ridership. There's a lot of interest in using a park and ride at Hastings. It's interesting we get more riders going to Newport Highway, and that is for the future, right? This is looking at 2040, which is the year the model projects out to. Near term, Hastings Park and Ride is still probably the best bet. And so it may be a phased approach where we initially run this to Hastings and then have certain conditions under which we would shift to Newport Highway, but still serve Whitworth University, likely on that dark blue line that goes on Hawthorne Road. Next slide. Okay, and I'm only got about 9 more minutes, so I'm going to run through this and kind of ask for questions once I show the evaluation matrix. I forget if I think I have one after this. Jason and I have been doing this dog and pony show so much, and plus we just had a different version of it and now sharing. So the 2040 model, we not only looked at transit operations, we looked at traffic. And this, you see the division corridor plus Newport Highway up to the North Spokane corridor, shown in the yellow highlight. And then there's these white bars. Those are screen lines where we look at traffic activity across that to get a sense of what's happening on a regional scale within North Spokane. Now, even before the BRT is in place, there's a drop of traffic volume. And that traffic volume drop is attributed to on the arterials, rather, specifically, is because of the North Spokane corridor. Even though regional traffic is projected to grow, the North Spokane corridor actually assimilates all that growth and then some. So we actually see a drop in traffic on local arterials. When we add the bus rapid transit on into the model, it then takes those conditions and drops traffic even further on division. And that's caused by 2 different phenomena. One is there's an increase in transit ridership. People are ditching their cars and taking transit instead of driving, so there is a reduction because of that. 2 is with those transit lanes in place, there's about a 20-second, depending on the alternative, 20-second more time required to get from end to end of the corridor. It's not much, but because it's just so sensitive and so just at that tipping point for a lot of people, there's more people say, I wasn't planning to go to division anyway. I'm just going to shift over to the North Spokane corridor. It's not to say there's not a lot of traffic still on division, because there is. But what it does say is the North Spokane corridor and division BRT actually work together to create a space for increased density, including capacity for motor vehicles on Division Street. And so that is, this corridor not only is set up to support transit in a BRT fashion, but also increase growth. And then as that growth comes in, certainly some people are going to drive, many people will drive for different reasons, but if that growth is happening in a way that is strategic and oriented towards the transit and the pedestrian, more of those trips can be accomplished by the transit and pedestrian and bicycle trips, and therefore the growth in traffic volume with that regional or that land use growth is going to be less than the land use growth itself. So that's, again, I think there's this whole project setting the stage for some really exciting land use exploration and reimagination. And the corridor traffic times are very stable, like I said, 20 seconds in most cases in terms of change in travel time. Next slide shows these kind of a heat map of the traffic congestion in 2040 based on volume of traffic compared to the capacity of the roadway. The yellow is some traffic congestion, yellow, dark, or orange and red is more congestion or more acute congestion. And you can see on division with the North Spokane corridor in place, there's no traffic really notable traffic congestion at all between Hawthorne Road all the way south of the river. You go look at center running, it's still the case. Side running A, it's still the case. Now side running B, that's where we create the two-way scenario. On Ruby, because you only have one lane in each direction, all the left turns are happening in that same lane. And even though, this is crazy, even though side running B dedicates more space to the automobile because it's done in a less efficient way than the side running C, there's more congestion in side running B, even though we're dedicating more space to automobiles. So side running C actually has, it has a little bit of congestion just basically between North River Drive and Desmet, I think, at the Gonzaga campus. Basically, people turning into the campus in the evening. That's causing a little bit more congestion. So that's the story on travel congestion, travel demand in North Spokane as a result of these scenarios, these alternatives. Next slide. So we've had lots of public engagement through our website. Next slide. And we are working towards having a preferred alternative presented to the public next month in a public hearing, and then set to bring forward a resolution. And we'd actually we'll be working with city council, city staff, and council staff to see if we can also bring this through city process, similar to what we did with the city line many years ago, to have a concurrence on that preferred alternative. But overall, the goal is to keep this project moving. It is in at least one version of a revenue package for the state of Washington's transportation bills to provide matching funding for the project, also looking to for federal funds. And so STA has already set aside $2 million for the initial preliminary engineering and environmental scoping phase. And then there's also, as Jason described earlier, the second phase of Division Connect. So try to get through that in our time, and just a few minutes for questions, but happy to answer as many as you have.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm afraid we probably are right up to our time as we're going to roll right into a hearing, but maybe we can invite you back very soon for if the commission has any thoughts, we can put them together and connect back. Yeah, I'm sorry. I think we do need, because I think we're going to try to squeeze one more item in before our hearing. So I think we'll thank you both for your time and
thank you
for your presentation.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Mr. Mueller, would you like to do the honors, please?
Yes. Well, before we get going on our hearings today, I'd like Melissa to have a few minutes to share some information with the group. And then I think after that, we can get going on our hearing item. So Melissa, if you'd like to share.
Hello, everybody, Plan Commission members and visitors. This is Melissa Wittstruck, Assistant Planner with the City of Spokane for about 18 years or so. And I am going to be retiring March 5th and moving on to another phase of my life. So I've enjoyed the work that I've done, a myriad of projects, and certainly a very talented group of planners. A lot of expertise in the city staff, and a very, very dedicated volunteer Plan Commission and city council members that are really engaged with planning projects and trying to move our community always forward and always better. So thank you very much for the honor and the experience of working with all of you.
Well, I want to say thank you, Melissa. And I hear it's a tradition for people to retire from the planning department and then become a plan commissioner. So
no pressure there.
Congratulations.
I know I've worked for probably 5 or 6 years now, and I've appreciated every one of them. So both when you were in ONS and in the planning department, I've really enjoyed working with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Very kind.
This is me too, but you'll love retirement.
Everybody on council, I can speak for everybody. I feel I can do this one moment. We are so grateful to have had you all those years, and I miss you horribly. Not to say that we don't have some great planners, but you know, it's always traumatic when somebody leaves. It's like I was asking Louis, is there anything we can do, like duct tape her to her chair, something? But, I wish you the very best, and thank you for all the service and all the things that you've provided for us. It made our jobs easier too, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa. It was nice to meet you. What are your future plans? This is Carol.
Hi, Carol. I haven't really firmed anything up yet, but I think I would like to go back to college and not work on a master's in planning, maybe take up a completely different thing. Teaching English as a second language, going to the Culinary Institute, although by the time I get through with it, it might be a good time to open a restaurant. I don't know. So got a lot of interests that I haven't had time for. As all of you know, our evening meeting schedule, it's kind of hard to plan around classes and things like that. But I'm sure my working career is not over. It's just going to be something different.
So thank you, Mary. Or Melissa, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
We're all in denial, which is a very selfish reaction, meaning we really appreciate all the interaction and thought you gave to this effort. So thank you.
Certainly. And Amanda Beck, our new planner, is going to be transitioning with both of the projects that I'm lead on, and you're going to be in great hands.
I think you need to stay through the end of all the code review.
You don't think that contributed to this?
The lead.
That's a lot of code.
I would like to second Greg.
There you go. See, Amanda concurs. So there we go. We're good. Thanks for staying on, Melissa.
Well, thank you for coming and sharing with us also. So, best of luck.
Thank you all. That's it for that bit of news. Are you ready to get going on our hearing items?
We are. Thank you.
Okay.
So I'll open up. Greetings, everyone. We are rolling right into it, but this is a hearing for the Spokane Plan Commission on Wednesday, February 24th, 2021. We have 3 hearing items today, so I guess formally we should probably reestablish quorum if that's okay. So Jackie, please.
Michael Baker.
Here.
Thank you. Todd Byrather.
Here.
Greg Francis. Tom Sanderson.
Here.
Carol Shook.
Here.
Clifford Winger.
Here.
Okay, and we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. And I guess I wasn't fully paying attention, but Melissa, you do have two of the items today, so I see where you're going. Okay. First item is the Shoreline Master Program periodic update with Melissa Witz, please.
All right, I'll start sharing my screen here. Does everybody see the opening slide and hear me okay? Good. So we also have colleagues from Department of Ecology here today in case you have any questions for them that I cannot answer. Jeremy Sykes, a senior planner with Eastern Washington Ecology offices, and Lauren Bromley, who's also been, both of them have been shepherding us through this process with the Shoreline Master Program. So without further ado, we'll get going. You have seen this presentation and information overview about the Shoreline Master Program periodic review a few times, but for our viewers out of the office, at home, or wherever they are watching, I'll just go through it quickly again. So this is the Shoreline Management Act requires all the counties and towns to go through this, and beyond the comprehensive update that we do periodically, which the next time I believe is in 2030, every 8 years we do this as well, just to review our Shoreline Master Programs. And the point of it is protecting the natural resources for future generations, public access to public waters, and planning for those water dependent uses, which are ever increasing in popularity. This is the jurisdiction for the city of Spokane. So you can see here's our confluence area heading up to the north and then west, and then through the city, and we have Latah Creek to the south as well. And basically we're covering, we have shoreline districts throughout the city, and we work off the ordinary high water mark, which was established the last time we went through a comprehensive update. This is a slide from Department of Ecology. As I mentioned, the periodic review happens every 8 years. These columns over here in purple just show that Spokane is in the middle of theirs period. And our periodic update is limited in scope. We did receive a grant from Department of Ecology for $33,000 to help with our periodic review. We're addressing the changes in the RCWs or the WACs or any new information about our own shoreline jurisdiction and trying to bring that all together. So we have to review several different slices of information. We will not be making any changes to the comprehensive plan. The shoreline chapter 14, was added to the comprehensive plan in the last go around in 2017. So what Ecology does is, one, they work with us to make sure that we are able to adequately and thoroughly address our Shoreline Master Program. They provide a checklist to all jurisdictions. And this is what it looks like. And we use this, and they just tell us, this is the year we changed it. What is your planning? What do your planning documents say? Then that's just a for instance, they changed the federal wetland delineation manual requirement. And this is how they provide us really great background to make sure we can go through our own documents. This is 17E, the Spokane Municipal Code, where you find the environmental standards and shoreline regulations in particular are at 17E060. And as I mentioned earlier, Chapter 14 is our policy foundation for our Shoreline Master Program in the comprehensive plan. This is what it looks like. You have this in your packet. You've got a lot of documents in your packet. So I'm just going to go through these really quickly and then try to point out some easier ways to maybe study this or ask or formulate questions if you have them. So we looked through what the summary of changes were that the state had been making. We looked at our own code sections, reviewed it, and then we formulated actions that we needed to take based on that. Not all of the changes over the last several years resulted in necessary action by the city of Spokane. Some of them we already had incorporated or we addressed them adequately. And you'll see that as part of the draft ordinance that you have to look at today. So this is what it looks like. Obviously, strike through and underline. One of the comments that we got did mention that there were several places in the SMC that mentioned what the costs were for a permit in various places, locations. And those costs are updated by Office of Financial Management. Every 5 years, they have to reevaluate that. And so we took that comment in and re-looked at our code, found those rest of those spots where we were mentioning a dollar figure that was out of line with what was current for the state as of 2017 or 2018, and made those changes as well. So here we are at Plan Commission hearing today. The stakeholder outreach for this project will continue through the adoption process after today. We've got City Council coming up. We'll have a longer, another 30-day comment period for City Council as well, and making sure that the public knows that they have plenty of time to comment and provide feedback. The review of proposed changes is iterative, and I work with Ecology as well as other information that comes in from, say, wildlife biologists or from the tribes about looking at our shorelines. And again, not a comprehensive update. It's a very limited scope, so we'll respond to those that we can within the scope of this particular project. We've already had our 30-day public comment period that's provided with both agencies, City of Spokane and Department of Ecology. That comment period closed February 5th. We received less than 10 comments between the SEPA determination of non-significance and the public comment period. Again, just to make sure that everybody out there knows, we will have another extended comment period before we get to City Council hearing. And at the bottom here, we'll need to be through with this project by June 30th of 2021. So this is what the public comment period looked like. The city receives the comments and documents them on both the amendment draft and the SEPA. We responded, and I did do that, to anybody that commented within 30 days of the close of the comment period. And I provided that record in today's packet to Ecology. There's quite a few other items that'll be required for Ecology for their review, and I'm putting those packet documents together now. Again, Ecology has 30 days after I get to that point with them for them to do their own agency review and initial determination of consistency. The City Council Committee, Urban Experience, was briefed on February 8th. We moved to Plan Commission on today, and pending recommendation from Plan Commission, the proposal will go forward to City Council. Probably by the time we get through with another 30-day comment period, probably April is what we'll be looking at. We do have a project page. It's easiest to get to if it's you Google on City of Spokane Shoreline Master Program periodic update. And we have a dedicated SMP review email. Since I will be leaving so shortly, this is probably the best way to go until Amanda Beck gets up to speed and changes all of the places where we have my name currently on the website. That concludes that. I do want to open up a second here. Close that. Oh. All right, let me share this new screen. Okay, so this is a very hefty document that was included. It's all the materials that were included in your packet for this hearing. Our briefing paper, which basically covers what I went over with you just now in the PowerPoint. And then, I'll try not to scroll too much here. This is what it looks like as far as changes to the code itself. So when we do the ordinances, we have to include all of this section. So there's quite a bit. Here's where you'll actually see the change in the definitions as opposed to it being one right after another. And I'm going to jump to page 48. So this is the periodic checklist that I was mentioning to you earlier. It has been updated as we responded to comments. And this is probably the most helpful place to see where did we have to make changes? How are we responsive? There's a couple of places I want to show you. These are some of the sections that I mentioned where Ecology amended rules in, I believe it was 2011. We already have a section of our code that is consistent with the 2011 statute. So there's no action, and there'll be a finding of adequacy in our draft ordinance. This is also quite long. This is the one that gets really dense. And so unless you want to, I won't spend a whole lot of time on it. This, as the recitations for, this is what we did for public participation. This is what the DNS was for SEPA. And as we reviewed it, here's all the opportunities that we have and continue to have for the public. All of our hearing notices. And then, which is new to me, never had to do these recitations where we are entering a finding of adequacy. This will take a little bit more work with the Ecology before we get to City Council, but this is a draft ordinance that you're seeing in your packet today. And with that, unless somebody wants to see a particular section, just remember that the changes that we are undertaking are to be coming into consistency with the state changes. We did select a couple of changes in our SMC section 17E or title 17E that had to do with changes to terminology for design review. And here's just an example. They're not necessarily substantive, But we do have to go through this process to make those changes. I'm gonna see if I can go through this really quickly. So basically, these are the ones that we initiated on our own as a city, just to clean up the language. And these suggestions came from the urban design group to make sure that we're using design criteria where we should be using, where we previously used guidelines. And that makes us consistent throughout our code. But those were the only changes that we initiated as a city outside of what the WAC and RCW changes were. Does anybody have any questions for me or want me to go to a certain section today?
So just to be clear, so you're still working with Ecology, and Ecology they'll have a final say before council approves it? Or
yes,
they determine that. I love the term adequacy. That's such a positive way of saying it. But so, okay, so there are multiple steps still involved. This is not just to be taken by council at this point.
No, so Ecology does have review work to do. City Council will take their action. And then there's also another City Council or Department of Ecology finding that they have to make at the state level before we're all wrapped up, said and done. And Jeremy and Lauren are on the phone, so if I misspoke on that process, please let me know. Not getting a...
I'm sorry, it took me a moment to get the button working. No, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
hi, this is Jeremy. sorry, we were both probably scrambling for our mute buttons there, but I think that's right. We definitely have one more step in the formal adoption or approval by Ecology. That's the kind of finding of adequacy piece for those parts, and the approval by the other parts. I guess, I just want to make sure that it's clear that we don't really have any more sort of formal approval process before it goes to council. That is entirely within the city's kind of process, and our formal process really only happens after that it's been adopted by the local jurisdiction, by the city. So our role is just collaborative with Melissa at this point and helping, nudge things this way or that way, or looking at things. Things have been looking great. We haven't really had to do too much, and Melissa is going to be an asset that you are going to miss and we're going to miss also. So, but congratulations to you, Melissa.
Thank you, Jeremy.
But, yeah.
Maybe she's going to work for Ecology to do these all the time.
That was going to be my next comment. This is a good example of a body of knowledge that it just going to be hard shoes to fill. So thank you, Melissa. And Jeremy and Lauren, welcome again. Welcome back. Is there anything else you'd like to add? And then maybe it's an opportunity, Melissa, for any commissioners to ask questions of you or Ecology? Okay.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, hearing none, are we okay to start to move into public testimony? Are you comfortable? Okay. Okay. Thank you. So since this is our first testimony for the day, I'll go through a couple quick rules that are appropriate for an online forum. So the hearing process here, we just heard from staff on this issue, and now we go into public testimony. We will invite the public to give public comments to up to, in this case, we'll do 3 minutes today. All persons and our commission members shall wait to be recognized by the president before speaking. I'll try to do my best to give you, a warning as we approach 3 minutes. And then there's an opportunity for commissioners to ask the person testifying for any questions. With that, if you're on the WebEx, there was an online sign up on the agenda. Jackie, do we have anyone who signed up formally there?
No, we did not have anybody sign up.
Okay, thank you. We will also recognize anyone who would like to just be acknowledged here. And if you're on the phone, I don't know, are the mics open or do we need a *3 to?
All the call-in users should be able to speak.
Okay. Would anyone like to be recognized by the commission to speak on this issue? Okay. Hearing none, we don't have any notes in the chat. I don't see any. Okay. Well, hearing none, we will now close the public testimony on this and then entertain a motion on recommendation here.
I move to recommend that City Council approve the Shoreline Master Program periodic review as written and presented.
Thank you. Greg? Is there a second?
I second
it.
Okay, let's acknowledge Carol on that one. Thank you. Okay, any deliberation on this by the commissioners? See, Melissa?
No deliberation, but I want to thank Melissa for all of her work, and I've read through and a lot of complexity there to make sure that we're compliant with a lot of different state rules.
Yeah.
So I'm sure a challenging project and that I'm sure has been joyful. So thank you.
Yes, please don't let silence dismiss the level of input, and then thank you for the thorough workshop that we conducted a few weeks ago. So,
Very welcome.
okay, with that, then I think maybe we'll take roll call, please.
All right, Michael Baker.
Aye.
Todd Byrather.
Aye.
Greg Francis.
Aye.
Thomas Anderson.
Aye.
Carol Shook.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Clifford Winger.
Aye.
All right. I think they were both aye. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you all very much.
We'll see you back soon.
Soon.
Commission, are we okay? I know we've been pushing straight through. Is everyone okay to keep going? Or do we need 2 minutes? Okay, we have many guests on, so if everyone's okay, we'll keep going. Assuming Maren, you're ready. The second hearing item is on the Fifth Avenue initiative. Maren, please.
Yes, thank you. Once again, I am Maren Murphy, planner here at the city. All right. So thank you, Commission President, Commissioners, for the opportunity for this public hearing today on the Fifth Avenue Initiative, the draft community strategy. I'm going to share a brief overview again of the project and then open it up for further discussion, consideration, or any questions. So the Fifth Avenue Initiative is a neighborhood-driven effort in partnership with the city to reimagine East Fifth Avenue in the East Central neighborhood. The project focused on Fifth Avenue from Liberty Park to Thor Freya and from the freeway to the bluff, and that colored section here, the yellow section. The outcome is a community strategy that provides actions for improvements, programming, and community building for citizens and businesses along the Fifth Avenue corridor. There's about 2,500 residents and just over 1,000 housing units in this area. And the neighborhood is one of the most racially and ethnically diverse areas of Spokane. The stakeholders identified this as a strength and an important part of their legacy and identity. And I also just want to note, if you're reading through that history there is a long history of inequality in this area. One of the oldest neighborhoods in Spokane, East Central, had an prosperous early history that was followed by economic decline, and then other practices around discriminatory housing, practices like redlining in the 1930s, and the construction of the I-90 freeway through the neighborhood in the 1950s. All of that created conditions of disinvestment that have continued over generations. But still in the face of these, the community has continued to fight for the livelihood of the neighborhood and the residents. And in the 1970s, the League of Women for Community Action planned and fundraised for the East Central Community Center. It was opened in 1979, and it was the first community center to open in the city. And following that, many other neighborhoods and areas in the city looked to have a community center as well. And so the history is important because it provides the backdrop for many of the challenges that the neighborhood continues to face, but also speaks to the resilience and the commitment of the community to reimagine and revitalize Fifth Avenue today. So this is also part of the reason why this initiative came about, as one way to address these inequities and the impacts caused over time. So the Fifth Avenue area today is rich in civic and institutional organizations, various faith-based organizations and groups, a lot of community services that support both the residents that live there as well as the broader area. They welcome anyone into their area at the Martin Luther King Jr. Family Outreach Center at East Central. There's a number of different organizations all along Fifth Avenue. Also, variety of parks and trails and natural features, and they maintain a few long-standing businesses as well as some new businesses that have opened up over the last few years that have provided a lot of exciting opportunities and growth. And additionally, the city has assisted the neighborhood in recent years by investing in sidewalk improvements and planting street trees along Fifth Avenue. And so this project hopes to see this investment and the partnership between the city and the community continue. So some upcoming opportunities, I just wanted to point out the US 395, the North Spokane Corridor, and the Children of the Sun Trail. So the Children of the Sun Trail, which will parallel the North Spokane Corridor, will connect to the Ben Burr Trail in East Central. So providing some really great biking, walking opportunities. There's the Spokane Regional Transportation Electrification Project, which is a partnership between the Spokane Regional Transportation Council, Avista, and other partners to install fast charging plugs across the county. And there's including in the Fifth Avenue area. And then a really significant one is the Liberty Park Library. The East Central Library, which is one of the smallest in the city, is being relocated, and a new library is being built in Liberty Park. It'll be nearly double the space that it was previously, and it will also feature a very large children's programming space. So a lot of really great opportunities to continue to build upon. And from the beginning, the Fifth Avenue Initiative really focused on inclusion and reflecting the diversity of the community. So again, the process builds on previous discussions over the last 5 years. And the city re-engaged the community in 2019 with a small project team. We hosted 3 stakeholder meetings and 2 community forums in late 2019 and early 2020, and had just developed the draft strategy in February 2020, literally a year ago. I think our last meeting there was February 22nd, before, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic put a pause to things. So that kind of the break that we had, but the community never lost sight of it, and really wants to see this project adopted by resolution and recognized by the city as on behalf of the community's efforts and priorities for the area. So that's where we are today. And I also want to acknowledge the many stakeholders who attended meetings and participated in discussions, both recently as well as over the course of the last few years, including our recent project team. And we really deeply appreciate everyone's time and energy and focus on Fifth Avenue, and had some really great conversations and activity building discussions. You can see an article from the Black Lens there highlighting some of the participants and sort of a ranking activity we had. So we're fortunate enough to do this, pre-COVID and be able to get together. So really had some really great conversations as part of this. And building from that, the community envisions Fifth Avenue to be an area of opportunity for current and future residents and an inviting place for people all over the city and region to come and visit. And so we have 6 different priorities. There's a number of different actions that are outlined in the community strategy. I won't go into detail on all of those, though I can certainly answer some questions. But overall, the priorities speak to defining the Fifth Avenue identity further, promoting coordination, improving the streetscape, preserve and expanding housing affordability, and mitigating displacement, promoting neighborhood commercial opportunities and participating in planning efforts, and then protecting and enhancing parks and trails. And following the workshop that we had last week, I sent a revised plan yesterday, so hopefully you saw that, but I expanded on the history of the development of the East Central Community Center, the role that that played, added an action about supporting arts, culture, and expression, included a reference to explore student housing and in support of nearby universities, and then also added a reference about environmental justice and addressing the hazards of the past. So those are some of the changes that we made following the workshop and incorporated those into the strategy. And then as far as next steps, like I said, we had the workshop last week, the public hearing today, and then hopefully move on to council for adoption by resolution. And of course, the stakeholders in the community are hopeful that there will be ongoing emphasis on implementation of the priorities and actions to help, again, reimagine the Fifth Avenue area going forward. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Outstanding. Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Is there anyone else, any of the stakeholders and partners that have joined us today that would like to say anything before we open it to public testimony?
I recognize a few. I'm not sure if they want to speak up.
Okay. Let's create the opportunity here. Welcome, everyone. Okay. Well, thank you. Hearing none. Let's open it up for public testimony. Is there anyone who has joined us? Well, maybe I'll ask first, Jackie. Has anyone signed up for this item?
Nobody signed up for this item either.
Okay, thank you. Then we welcome anyone on WebEx or on the phone to state your name and desire to testify.
Lonnie Mitchell here.
Thank you, Reverend Mitchell. Please go ahead.
Yes. I would like to comment whenever you're ready.
We're ready. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think I see my outstanding councilwoman, Betsy Wilkerson, is with us. What a blessing. To the commissioners, it gives me a great joy to comment on the Fifth Avenue initiative in the East Central neighborhood of Spokane. Just yesterday, I had the pleasure of meeting up and serving again with the former mayor, David Condon. He and I are on the United Way board together, where under his leadership, the concept of the Fifth Avenue initiative originated. When I saw Mayor Condon, I immediately thought about how we started the conversation about revisiting the hard work others did to get the initiative started. I remember we talked about preserving the historical flavor of the community and engaging stakeholders to partner with the city to build and revitalize our community. Back in 2019, Mayor Condon and I charted that path and invested our time in moving the initiative toward completion. Rodney McAuley, a pioneer member of the Spokane African-American community, took the leadership role, and Maren Murphy, a member of the city planning department, gave staff support to moving the Fifth Avenue initiative along. I give high commendations to them for doing a superb job in engaging the community. Their work involved the convening of at least 2 stakeholders meetings, the gathering of impressive and impactful discussion centered around community development, and the crafting of the Fifth Avenue initiative resolution. That is hopefully to be passed on to the Spokane City Council for adoption. The approval of the resolution, in my opinion, is needed to give the Fifth Avenue initiative legitimacy and mayoral direction to advance the revitalization work already driven by a community engagement momentum toward completion. And so I strongly recommend that this commission partner with the citizens of East Central to advance the work of the Fifth Avenue Initiative stakeholders. Humbly and respectfully submitted, Reverend Lonnie Mitchell Sr. God bless you guys.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Councilmember Wilkerson.
Thank you, Todd, and I'm going to speak as Betsy Wilkerson, longtime resident of East Central today. So I ran that strip of East Fifth Avenue almost my entire life. I grew up on 4th and Altamont. I still live right up the hill on the Altamont Circle. As I look at the map that's in your packet, there's a church on there. It's called Mount Zion Holiness Church. That's the church my mom started. So my roots are deep. The history's deep. It's rich. People care about that neighborhood. I've seen it evolve over the years, but I like to see it evolve again to where it was and to go forward. We're just looking for the city to invest in a neighborhood that is still part of the city. And we are so close to downtown, we have to be considered for the growth of the downtown area and to partnership with the U District and the other neighborhoods around us. And for my friend Charlene Kay, who I'm not speaking as her WashDOT role, we are both East Central rats. So there is commitment to the growth of this neighborhood, not just for the history, but for the future of the people who can live there. And for the kids in that neighborhood, unbelievable opportunity. So I encourage the Planning Commission to adopt this today.
Thank you for those words.
So that was no pressure, Todd. I'm just saying.
I'm honored to be in this role, so thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Well, I think those are two good submissions, so thank you. Okay, with that, then we can close the public testimony and then entertain a motion for recommendation.
I move to recommend that City Council adopt the Fifth Avenue Initiative as originally presented.
I second it.
Thank you. Greg and Michael, I believe. Yes. Okay. Deliberation, please.
I would just like to say, you know, I was a resident of 4th and Lacey for 9 years. And the thing was, and this is where I never really truly recognized the value of the neighborhood until after I left. We went to the park, we went to East Central Community Center, we went to a variety of places. But as a young person, just up and coming, I lived there and left. And what I failed to recognize was the rich history that went with the neighborhood and the wonderful culture that's in the neighborhood. And it is my hope that what we can preserve is the opportunity for people not to be gentrified out of the area, that the area can continue to grow and improve and allow for multi-generations to live in the area. And you know, it was a wonderful experience in retrospect. And I really appreciate the opportunity to live there, and I'm happy to support this initiative.
Thank you, Greg. Commissioners?
Todd, I'd like to add a comment, if you don't mind. This is Carol.
Yes, please, Carol.
I appreciate all the work that's been done by the committee, the Fifth Avenue Initiative Committee. You've done a great job. You've supported the work that's already gone before you. I appreciate the words that were said about the League of Women for Community Action, and also to be inclusive about the daycare project, which is still there. And one of my hopes and prayers for that city, that area, as I drive through the neighborhood, is that we become a neighborhood of prosperity, that we're no longer looked upon as a poor neighborhood or a disadvantaged neighborhood, but we have some really strong people that come out of the community that do well, they prosper well, they give back to the community, and we already see some of those people, Betsy and just some more people that we're aware of that live in the area and that are giving back to the area. So my desire is every child that comes up in that neighborhood grows spiritually, emotionally, and financially, and is able to really, really do a fantastic job in the East Central area. I support the initiative today. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Yeah, I'll add, I just celebrate this initiative. I can't think of a effort that better represents, you know, the collaborative nature of why we do what we're doing, and I think also is, you know, for me, honor and reminder to on the engagement of the stakeholders. It's often a lot of this effort is zooming in and out of maps, looking at abstract representations of data and so forth, and I think it's been an honor to get to know some of the stakeholders and then from my personal standpoint, you know, work harder to engage on this effort, and I'm looking for what the next steps are. So please tell us. Okay, well, with that, thank you, everyone. Let's take our roll call, please.
All right, Michael Baker.
Aye.
Todd Byrather.
Aye.
Greg Francis.
Aye.
Aye.
Carol Shook.
Aye.
Clifford Winger.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations, everyone. We look forward to council's action. Okay, thank you. Then moving into our final item for the hearing today. Now that I've lost it, I believe it's back to Ms. Wittstruck, please.
Thanks again. Good to see you again, Plan Commission members. And it is Melissa Wittstruck with City Planning. And I'm here to present the hearing item on the Unified Development Code Maintenance Project, which is just covering phase 1 at this point in time. Let's see if I can get this. Oops. Okay, you should be able to see the screen now. And I'll just run through this quickly. This is another project that you've seen a few times already. And it's necessary work. It's a little drier than the Shoreline Master Program project, no pun intended there. But this is a list of projects or proposals for amendment to some titles in the Spokane Municipal Code. The purpose of the project is to make sure that we are responding to needed corrections that are identified by either public users or city staff users to changing conditions and the potential improvements for all users. That being said, phase 1 for the hearing today is what's considered to be minor changes, minor corrective actions. There are 2 additional phases that will be coming your way at some point in 2021, probably 2022. It'll be phase 2 and phase 3. But phase 1, again, is minor corrections, maintenance efforts. I chose a bike chain for the maintenance project, but it could be anything else like just taking care of your house on a basic thing, no major roof repairs. This was, the 2015 was the last year of adopted updates to the Unified Development Code, and that package consisted of some, I believe it was around 40 different chapters or titles in the code that needed to be updated. So we trimmed it back and took this in phases, like I said. So the 3 phases will be minor, clarification, and substantive. We are talking about minor changes. These could include corrections to cross references from Title 11 that are still in Title 17. We repealed Title 11, most of it, last summer. Sometimes there was redundant phrasing or an inaccurate word choice. And so bottom line is these are not changing meaning, or they're not substantive. And so those are minor. The draft ordinance is in your packet and online. Similar, so this is the review guide. This is just an excerpt from it. I will use the review guide after we get done with the PowerPoint, which is fairly short, so that you have a little bit better feel for exactly what the changes are. And so the viewing audience as well participating can get an idea that these are the sections that are being changed. This is a different chapters, sections, and other titles that are covered in this particular effort. This is an example of the first one for Design Review Board. Again, we worked with, or the Urban Design Group worked with us to update wording that was inaccurate. So here it's highlighted, development was struck through, and design standards, which is the better or more correct phrasing for this particular part of the code. These phase 1 proposed amendments are categorically exempt under SEPA 4321 with the WAC citation there. And that's because we're not doing anything that's an environmental change. We're simply taking care of some mistakes or corrections that need to be made at this point in time. Later phases may address more substantive changes to the code, and that would be a different SEPA process in that case. Again, here's what we've been through for process. We came to you and briefed you September 23rd and November 11th of 2020. We sent an internal notice of intent to adopt to the State Department of Commerce for changes to the code as required. We also sent this out to agencies, internal departments, and other interested parties November 10th. We established a city project page, and we published in the City Gazette. We also went to Community Assembly December 3rd, and we published hearing notices. As you recall, we had some difficulties with some weather issues in January, so we rescheduled. And we went to City Council's Urban Development Committee January 11th of this year. Again, just reiterating, these are just changes that are minor, and we have no comments other than from internal staff to help improve this effort, but we received no public comments on this project. If you have any questions for me at this point, I'll stop sharing this screen and just go to the documents that you received in your packet, which are a little also, again, pretty weighty. A briefing paper, which just goes over what we've already talked about today. The draft amendment ordinance, again, kind of difficult to read, but that's where you're going to see all the different sections and how those changes or proposed amendments play out. And then I will go to the review guide, which is a little bit easier. I think that's on 24. This is a review guide that has been refined a couple of times as I worked with internal staff and presented it to you as well. So just tried to keep it improving so that it's easier to understand by the time you get to it for a hearing item. It's just a table of comments that you saw before. And here's where it goes into more, there's a little bit of discussion. The changes are highlighted so it's easier to follow.
Hey, Melissa?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I think maybe your screen's not sharing.
It's not?
It was previously.
Okay. Is it sharing
Yeah.
now?
Thank you.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Okay. So here's where you just get a little bit more explanation about the nature of the changes, the complete section of code, and a little bit of a discussion. What we're doing is, again, taking out development and putting in the more accurate terminology for design standards. Same thing here. We're talking about the discussion is why we're changing this is because the section that's being referred to, and as far as design criteria, is actually called decision criteria. So again, that internal consistency that maybe staff users are used to, but it's kind of a little bit of a pain. And certainly for the public users, it's can be a problem for them to navigate. Here's one of the redundant phrasing pieces that we found. Limited industrial uses are allowed, so therefore we do not need to repeat ourselves and say only limited industrial uses are allowed. This was a request that came from basically from code enforcement talking about public disturbance noise. This is one that I expect to come back for more clarification or substantive change later in the year as we work more closely with the police department because they handle a lot of that. Here again, just updating our language. We don't do the special use permit, we do conditional use permits. This one came from the Building Developer Services Center, updating what actually is the process for a notice of hearing from the building official and getting the department name correct. So again, just emphasizing for everybody that's joining us today, these are minor changes, nothing substantive, making it easier to be used, more user-friendly, I guess would be a shorter way of saying it. Here's a correction that we have, Division B and Division C, we actually call those titles 17B and Title 17C. So, and then eliminating those references to 11 different chapters in Title 11 that have been repealed. Correcting references, again, same thing, which was a lot of what we were doing, is removing those old references to Title 11 and giving them the correct citation. And that's just it, our public hearing notice. And that ends the presentation from me, unless you have questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Are these two projects the ones that caused you to retire?
I really like working on policy. But hunting and pecking through the code was a little bit, oh my gosh. Use word search for chapter 11. So no, it's great to have it cleaned up, and it is a very much, the maintenance projects are needed. Like I said, it's been 2015 since the staff has had time to get to it, so it's great to make this start on it and have a more current record for possibly Amanda to take on.
Welcome, Amanda. Okay, if no other questions, then let's open it to public testimony. I don't think we had anyone sign up, correct?
Right, nobody signed up.
Anyone like to be recognized? Okay, seeing none, then we close the testimony and entertain a motion.
I move to recommend that City Council approve Phase 1 of the SMC Code Maintenance Updates as written and presented.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Michael, any discussion or deliberation? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa, for all your work and going through it.
With that,
I thought you might have a few hardballs for me, but that's fine. This is good.
I scrolled through it. I looked at it. With that, let's take the roll call, please.
All right, Michael Baker.
Aye.
Todd Byrather,
Aye.
Greg Francis,
Aye.
Thomas Sanderson,
Aye.
Carol Shook,
Aye.
Clifford Winger. Commissioner Winger, are you there still? Oh, I see him. Commissioner Winger? All right, looks like we might have lost him.
Okay.
I can.
We got it.
Thank you.
Good way to finish out. Thank you. That's it, right? Jackie?
Yes, it is. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, then we close it out. Thank you, Melissa. Is there any other comments? Yeah, for the good of the order here?
Todd, I just want to let everybody know, Jackie has sent all of you the complete 2-hour YouTube recording of the discussion we had last week with the Association of Realtors.
Yeah, I do recommend. I watched it live. There's a lot of good information in there. So thank you to the realtors for putting that on, and to Darren and yourself. Okay, anyone else?
I have one item. I'm going to ask, since we kind of cut Carl and Jason off, I'm going to ask them to come back to the next Plan Commission meeting if they're available, or an upcoming one, so we can have that dialogue. I think the Plan Commission needs an opportunity to get some feedback from them. So
no, thank you. That's a great idea, and please apologize to them.
Yeah, sorry, we kept this all pretty tight today. So
yeah, no, if they're willing, that'd be great. I have questions.
Carl had mentioned dogs and ponies too, and I didn't know STA was getting into dogs and ponies, but maybe they're going to go ride a pony down division. Who knows?
I didn't hear that part, but I take your word on it.
That's multimodal. Okay,
Multi
dogs and ponies.
Okay.
For a buck these days.
Okay, with that, I think we're adjourned. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Good seeing you all.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you.